little bit of context for you before I start reading this. Some of you'll know it already, but let just give you a bit of context. When I first started writing for publication, I started doing stories called Tales from the Longcroft, and they were stories about a working class housing estate such as I grew up on, and about people who did naughty deeds and stole stuff, and basically adult stories that usually had a bit of heart, humour, and usually a nice little ending. And out of that came a pub called the Rampant Horse. And out of the Rampant Horse came two characters called Dave and Vinny. And Dave and Vinny were such large characters in my head, I decided I've written a lot of solo stuff that are just short Dave and Vinny stories. So now I always like to come back to them, particularly in times of strife and hassle and stuff. So I pecked away at the story to keep myself amused when I couldn't sleep. So I shall read you the story. It'll probably be about 10 minutes long. It's called Dave and Vinny First Contact. There are 2 chapters to it. I don't know, it's probably about 1,000 words all told, if that. So, chapter 1, Aurora. Dave and Vinny sat at their usual spot in the Rampant Horse, pints in hand, still buzzing from the surreal experience they'd just had. The Aurora Borealis, of all things, right above them, in the skies over the Longcroft estate. Dave took a sip of his beer and shook his head. Mate, I still can't get over it. The sky was literally on fire, like a magical screensaver. Vinny wiped beer foam from his upper lip thoughtfully. Sorry, I'm just inserting a space there. Nah, Dave. It was more like the universe was showing off. You know, like, oi, lads, bet you've never seen this before. Dave leaned back in his chair, eyes wide. It was like cosmic curtains. Cosmic curtains, mate, all squishy and bright. But also kind of like when my washing machine goes on the fritz and flashes those weird lights. Vinny raised an eyebrow. Cosmic curtains? You've been reading poetry again? You have, haven't you? Next thing you'll be telling me the stars winked at you knowingly. Don't mock me, Vin, Dave said, trying to keep a straight face. I'm telling you, that green swirl was winking. Either that or I need new glasses. But seriously, can you believe people just see that all the time, like it's nothing? Vinny nodded. Yeah, and we lose our minds if the sun comes out for 2 days in a row. Different worlds, mate, but at least we have a green and pleasant land. Vinny cocked his head, listening to the sirens in the distance. Maybe not always so pleasant, actually. Dave leaned forward, low in his voice, like he was sharing state secrets. You reckon it's aliens? You know, testing the waters before they show up. Give us a light show, see how we handle it. Vinny nearly spat out his drink. Aliens, mate? You think little green men are sending laser shows just to suss us out? If they're that subtle, they've got no chance here. They'd need to project football highlights across the moon to get our attention. Dave laughed. Yeah, true. We'd just think it's another government initiative if they landed, wouldn't we? Oh, great, more forms to fill in. And now they want to probe us too. Taxes were bad enough. Dave thought a moment. Do you reckon they're actually green, then? Vinny gave his friend a funny look, then tapped his pint glass thoughtfully. Honestly, though, it makes you wonder. Why does the sky do that? Like, what's the science behind it? Dave blinked. Science? I thought it was magic. You telling me there's an actual explanation? Vinny snorted. Mate, everything's got an explanation. Something about particles from the sun hitting the Earth's atmosphere, and I don't know, it goes all neon disco. You reckon God is a raver? Dave chuckled. That might explain the duck-billed platypus, and beavers. But yeah, makes sense. Particles. Always the particles. I should have paid more attention in school. Thanks for the heart, me, Rob. Vinny looked at him deadpan. You did pay attention, just not to the right subjects, like your 100% attendance in skipping class. Dave pointed at him with a grin. And look at me now, watching space lights with me best mate, sipping a cold one. Couldn't have planned it better. Vinny raised a glass. Here's to us then, and the cosmic disco. Dave clinked his glass. To us, and the universe, and showing off with fancy lights. They both took a sip, looking at each other knowingly, before Dave broke the silence. Vin, I know you don't want to hear this, but I swear I saw a UFO right before the lights started. Vinny sighed deeply. Here we go. Chapter 2. First Contact. The rampant horse was getting busier. The usual Friday night crowd filing in. Dave and Vinny, however, were still deep in their post-Aurora musings when the door swung open, bringing in a gust of cold air and something else entirely. A tall, lanky figure walked in, wearing a trench coat that looked about 3 sizes too big. Its head was tucked into the collar, and a wide-brimmed hat shadowed most of its face. What caught Dave and Vinny's attention was the strange shimmer about him, almost like the air around him was buzzing. Dave's eyes widened. Vin, you seeing this? Vinny turned from his pint, his brows knitting together. If you mean that bloke who looks like he just landed from the set of Men in Black, then yeah, what's his deal? The figure moved awkwardly to the bar, walking with a strange shuffle that made him look like he was trying to figure out how legs worked. Dave leaned in, lowering his voice. That's it. That's the alien. I told you, mate. First the Sky Show, now this. He's come down to probe us. Vinny gave Dave a long look. I know you've been married a long time, Dave, but don't get too excited. It's probably just some fella from out of town. Maybe he's cold. Maybe he's eccentric. Heaven knows. He wouldn't be the only one around here. Not everything's about aliens. But Dave was on full alert, his pint forgotten. I don't know, Vin. Look at him. Who wears a hat indoors? And that coat. It looks like he borrowed it from Hagrid. Vinny laughed. Says the man whose fashion sense remains deeply rooted in the 1980s. Dave didn't answer. He was too busy watching the stranger. Just then, the figure reached the bar, tapping the counter with long, bony fingers. When he spoke, his voice was odd. Thank you for the heart, me. Excuse me, barman. I would like one beverage, please, he said, each word delivered like he'd only just learned English from a phrase book. Ken, the barman, looked up, eyebrow raised. What'll it be then, mate? Lager, ale, cider? I have a nice selection of guest ales. Nearby regulars raised their eyebrows at the word nice. The figure hesitated, as if processing the options. Yes. 1. Ale. Ken pulled a pint, picking his most expensive guest beer. If people couldn't be specific, then that was their lookout. Ken glanced at the trench-coated figure, like he was unsure whether to laugh or call for backup. He slid the drink across the counter. The figure picked it up, stared at it for an uncomfortably long time, then brought it to his lips. But instead of drinking, he just held it there, like he didn't quite know what to do next. Vinny, still sceptical but intrigued, nudged Dave. All right, I'll admit this is weird. Maybe he's just nervous, you know? First time in a pub? Nah, mate, Dave whispered, eyes glued to the scene. Look at him. He doesn't even know how to drink. Classic alien behaviour. They don't do pints on Mars or wherever he's from. Vinny snorted. Mars? If he's from Mars, he's seriously underdressed. The figure eventually took a small sip. Grimaced like he'd just been fed battery acid. I put the glass down carefully, wiping his mouth with a gloved hand. And then he turned, scanning the room with an unsettlingly slow movement. Sorry, just wetting my whistle. His gaze, or what they assumed were his eyes under that shadowy hat, landed directly on Dave and Vinny. Hi, Amy. Dave froze. He's seen us. Vinny was starting to feel uneasy. All right, Dave, just play it cool. Hey, Maria. Just play it cool. Don't engage. He'll think we're onto him. But it was too late. The figure shuffled over to their table, looming awkwardly at the edge of the seat. He stood there in silence for a moment, his trench coat still shimmering faintly, as if it wasn't quite solid. Vinny, always the diplomat, cleared his throat. Can we help you, mate? The figure tilted his head and spoke in that stilted, robotic tone again. I am new here. I have observed your customs. Dave looked at Vinny. Vinny looked at Dave. Dave's look said, I told you so. He leaned forward, trying to suppress a grin. Yeah, well, welcome to Earth, mate. Bit different from where you're from, huh? Vinny elbowed him, but the figure nodded slowly. Yes, your beverages are strange, but I am learning. Vinny stared. His scepticism was starting to crumble. Learning, eh? Where are you from? Not around here, that's for sure. Where are you from? The figure paused. I am from a place. A distant place. Grimsby? Milton Keynes, maybe? Vinny asked. Dave's grin widened. Knew it. He's not even trying to hide it. Full-on alien. What's your name, then? Zargoth the Conqueror? The figure blinked, as if processing the question. I am... Designation... Vintrax. Vinny burst out laughing, despite himself. Vintrax? That's a terrible cover name. What did you do? Watch too much bloody Star Trek before coming down? The figure, Vintrax, didn't react to the laughter, just stood there awkwardly. I am here to observe, to understand your kind. Dave leaned back, folding his arms. Well, you're in the right place, mate. This is Earth, and we're a couple of prime specimens of humanity. What do you think so far? Vintrax blinked slowly, like a computer rebooting. You are interesting. Your energy levels fluctuate. Your beverages affect your logic centres. Vinny raised an eyebrow. Well, yeah, that's kind of the point of the drinks, mate. Dave smirked. He's right, though. I'm feeling pretty logical after that last pint. Vintrax nodded, as if this was crucial information. I see. I must report this to my overseers. Vinny's face went pale. Wait, hang on. Overseers? You've got overseers? Listen, pal. Don't let management tell you what to do. Sit down, enjoy a beer with us, stick it to the man. Vintrax just looked confused at Vinny's outburst. Dave clapped his hands. Told you, we're part of an intergalactic survey. He's taking notes. Vintrax didn't respond, just slowly shuffled away, leaving Dave and Vinny sitting there, wide-eyed. Vinny finally broke the silence. All right, Dave, I'm officially freaked out. Dave grinned. Freaked out, mate? This is brilliant. We've just had pints with an alien. We're basically Earth ambassadors. Vinny drained the rest of his pint. Ambassadors? More like the local idiots who've just made first contact and contact in the worst possible way. Dave raised his glass in a toast. To us, Vin, and to Vintrax. Wherever he's gone, probably back to his spaceship. Vinny shook his head, but couldn't help smiling. Yeah, to Vintrax. May he never figure out how pints works. Ken came round collecting empties, his surly eye never missing a transgression. He'd occasionally mutter things like, couldn't you have used a beer mat? I've got to clean that table. He eventually reached Dave and Vinny's table, which was in a worse state than most, with beer stains, peanuts and pork scratchings scattered around like a mini-apocalypse. I see you've met him then, grinned Ken. Dave looked at Vinny. Vinny looked at Dave. You mean the alien? You know about him? Said Vinny incredulously. Ken laughed. He's an old friend. I told him he could have a pint for free if he came over and wound you up. But, said Dave. Ken held up his hand and chuckled. He's a cosplayer. There's a convention in town. He was just staying in character. You bastard, said Dave and Vinny in unison. And there we have it. First Dave and Vinny I've written in ages, and I really enjoyed doing it. And I hope you enjoyed me reading it.